Welcome. We're diving into the world of Jorge Luis Borges today. Specifically, we're going to be looking at Ficciones. You're interested in his style and themes, right? Which is perfect because Ficciones really showcases all that. We've got some great excerpts to dig into and a little background on Borges, too.
Yeah, Ficciones is great. Really gets at the heart of what makes Borges so interesting.
One of the first things that hit me about Borges is how he plays with the structure of his stories. Like he's always blurring the lines between what's real and what's imagined, especially with those stories within stories, the frame
Oh
stories.
yeah, they make you question everything.
Right. Like you can't even trust what the narrator's telling you.
The shape of the sword is a perfect example of that. Keeps you guessing until the very end.
Exactly. And then there's the way he uses metafiction, where the stories become almost self-aware.
Ah, like he's letting you in on the joke.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's winking at you, reminding you that this is all a construction, a story he's crafted.
It's like he's saying, don't get too comfortable, keep thinking. The lottery in Babylon does that really well, makes you question history itself.
Oh, how so?
Well, there's that line, and I'm paraphrasing here, something like, the lottery is an interpolation in the cosmos, but it's also the cosmos itself.
Mm.
It's a bit mind-bending, but it makes you think about how we build narratives, right? How much of history is just our interpretation of events.
It's like he's suggesting it's all just a giant game of chance, in a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, who's to say what's truly random and what's not? And that kind of leads into some of the bigger themes you see in Ficciones, like what even is reality.
Right. Is it fixed, or is it something we're actively shaping with our minds?
Exactly. And that's where a story like Tlön, Uqbar, Orbis Tertius comes in. You've got this whole fictional world complete with its own history and beliefs. It starts to bleed into our reality. It's unsettling, to say the least.
It's like he predicted the internet, in a way, isn't it? The way we form communities online, how those shared beliefs can almost will things into being. It's wild.
It really is. And speaking of beliefs shaping reality, we can't forget about Ficciones the memorioso and how Borges tackles memory and forgetting.
Right. Fuse, who can remember everything, actually suffers because of it.
It makes you wonder, what's the ideal then? Total recall or selective forgetting? Which one allows us to really make sense of the world?
Maybe our brains are kind of like those massive libraries Borges was so drawn to. We need a way to categorize, to filter. Otherwise, we're just drowning in information.
It's information overload, but on a cosmic scale. And I think that's what the Library of Babel is really getting at, that sense of infinite possibility, but also the potential for meaninglessness when you're faced with every book imaginable.
It's awe-inspiring and terrifying at the same time.
Exactly. Borges at his best.
I mean, it makes you think, right? Like, what's the point of all this information if it doesn't lead us somewhere meaningful?
Yeah, it's not just about having access to knowledge, it's about knowing what to do with it. That's the challenge Borges throws at us.
Totally. But going back to the Library of Babel for a second, I'm kind of stuck on this idea of the universe as a library. It's such a bizarre concept when you really try to wrap your head around it.
It's almost too big to imagine, isn't it? Like every possible book, every combination of letters just existing out there somewhere.
It's mind-boggling. And a little disheartening when you think about it.
How so?
Well, because if every possible book exists, then somewhere out there is the perfect book, the one with all the answers, right?
Yeah.
But the chances of finding it, that infinite vastness, feel impossible.
Yeah, the sheer scale of it can make you feel pretty insignificant. And I think that's part of what Borges is getting at, this idea that even with infinite knowledge, we're still going to be searching for something. We're wired that way.
To always want more, to search for meaning, even when it feels impossible. It's kind of a bleak outlook, isn't it?
Well, maybe. Or maybe it's just honest. Borges wasn't afraid to explore the darker sides of human nature, our tendency toward doubt and uncertainty. But there's also a beauty in that, I think.
I see what you mean. It's like he's acknowledging the struggle. And he's not going to pretend he has the answers.
Exactly. He's not preaching, he's exploring. And he's inviting us to join him on that journey.
Which is interesting because, in a way, that connects back to what we were saying about Tlön, Uqbar, Orbis Tertius, doesn't it?
Oh, how so?
Well, both stories deal with the power of belief. In Tlön, it's the collective belief in this fictional world that starts to make it real. And in the Library of Babel, it's like our own individual beliefs, the information we choose to focus on that shapes our reality. We're creating our own internal libraries, in a way.
That's a really interesting connection. I've never thought about it that way before. It's like we're all librarians of our own minds, curating the information we allow in.
And that comes with a lot of responsibility, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if we're not careful, we can end up trapped in our own little echo chambers.
for sure. But it also means we have the power to choose what we let shape us, what we allow to influence our worldview.
Which is both empowering and a little terrifying at the same time.
Isn't that the beauty of Borges, though? He makes you think about these things.
He really does. Speaking of thought-provoking, maybe we should lighten the mood a bit and talk about the lottery in Babylon now.
You think a story about a society ruled by an all-powerful lottery is going to lighten the mood?
Okay, fair point.
Mm.
But it is a fascinating look at how much control we really have over our own destinies.
It is that. And like so much of Borges' work, it operates on multiple levels. On the surface, you've got this almost absurd premise, but underneath, it's grappling with these huge philosophical questions about free will, determinism.
Yeah, like, if our lives are already predetermined, does it even matter what choices we make?
Exactly. Is it better to embrace the chaos, the randomness of it all? Or do we cling to the illusion of control? Borges doesn't give us easy answers, but he certainly gives us a lot to chew on.
That he does. And it's interesting because even though the citizens in the story have supposedly given up control to the lottery, there's still an element of choice, isn't there?
Absolutely. They choose to believe in the system, to find meaning in the randomness. And that act of choosing, even within a system that seems to deny it, that's really what makes us human.
It's that struggle for meaning, that search for understanding that ultimately connects us all. And it's something Borges captures brilliantly in his work.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, maybe it's time we move beyond Ficciones itself and look at how Borges' own life and career reflect these themes.
Yeah, let's talk about the man behind the stories, because he wasn't just a writer of short stories, was he? You're right about that. His range is incredible. He wrote essays, poetry, worked as a librarian, even lectured on literature at the university.
He was incredibly prolific and deeply engaged with the world of literature in so many ways. And this really comes through in his writing, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's clear he was a man in love with ideas, with language, with exploring the far corners of imagination. And he was recognized for that, too.
He received numerous awards throughout his career, including the prestigious Formentor Prize and the Cervantes Prize, both major accolades in the world of literature.
It's amazing to think that a writer so interested in the infinite possibilities of fiction also had this grounded, real-world experience as a librarian, someone surrounded by books. It makes me think of the Library of Babel again, and how it speaks to both the wonder and the potential chaos of vast knowledge.
It's a beautiful connection, and it really gets to the heart of what makes Borges so fascinating. His work constantly encourages us to make these kinds of connections, to see the patterns and echoes between ideas, between stories, between life and art. He even does it within Ficciones itself, weaving symbols and recurring motifs throughout the collection, prompting you to look for those hidden threads of meaning.
And that's ultimately why he continues to resonate with readers today, decades after his death, isn't it? He offers us these timeless meditations on identity, reality, the very nature of the universe, questions humans have grappled with for centuries.
And he does it in a way that feels both intellectually stimulating and incredibly playful. He never spoon-feeds you the answers. Instead, he invites you into a dialogue, a shared exploration of these big questions. It's as though he's saying, here's what I'm thinking about, now you think about it too, and let's see where our thoughts take us.
Exactly. And he wasn't afraid to blend genres either. He effortlessly weaves together philosophy, fantasy, literary playfulness, and profound existential angst. That's a rare and captivating combination for a writer to pull off so well.
And perhaps that's the most valuable takeaway from our deep dive into Borges' world.
Yeah.
To embrace that same spirit of exploration, to never be afraid of asking the big questions, of challenging our own assumptions, of venturing into the unknown and seeing where it leads.
To wander those labyrinthine paths of thought and see what unexpected discoveries await.
Precisely. And speaking of labyrinths, as we reach the end of our deep dive, I'm reminded of a line from The Garden of Forking Paths. Time forks perpetually toward innumerable futures.
What a perfect note to end on. It reminds us of that Borgesian sense of infinite possibility, the idea that every choice, every moment, holds the potential to lead us down a new and unexpected path.
So as you delve further into Borges' work, I encourage you to keep that in mind. Pay attention to those moments where you find yourself questioning, reflecting, making connections you hadn't considered before.
Because those are the moments when you truly enter the labyrinth of Borges' imagination, a place where the boundaries between reality and fiction blur, and where the only limits are the ones we impose on ourselves.
Happy exploring.